My design was perfect.
Look what you did to Mr. Bigglesworth!
But Dr. Evil, we were unable to anticipate feline complications due to the reanimation process.
Silence! Let this be a reminder to you all that this organization will not tolerate failure. Gentlemen, let's get down to business.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sustained Pride Podcast. On today's show, Fano and I will be joined at the roundtable by our Detroit Lions locker room insider, Mike Mady. As well, dropping in the show will be Lions enthusiast and friend of the show, Jeffrey Ziba. Alright, so before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's discussion, let's go over what we kind of discussed last week in terms of what we needed to do. So first off, we shouldn't panic until we lose at home.
Check.
We lost at home. The next thing is, we had to get the running game going. And it was pretty obvious to everyone that we need to get at least 25 rushes per game for our running backs.
Check.
We got 18 for a total of 29 yards. I know what the mood is in this room. What do you think the mood in the room was? I can't even say this with a straight face. But what was the mood in the room after this loss to Denver? A game that we potentially could have won. Denver wasn't playing that well on offense.
Well, let's turn it over to our NFL locker room insider, Mike Mady.
Hey guys, thanks for having me again. After the game, obviously, you could notice that there's a bit of frustration, disappointment, whatever. You know, the air was out of the stadium. You could feel it towards the end of the game. There's more orange left in the stands when the game was ending, and I mean the players, usually get out of there kind of fast, win or loss, but a little bit faster out of after a loss. And so after the Stafford addressed the media and after Caldwell addressed the media, the locker room's empty. So it's hard to feel, but you could even see, in the week leading up that there was
how were those two press conferences? Obviously, we can go and listen to them, but you were there. Why don't you give us a little insight to how Stafford kind of came off?
I mean, deflated. There's a noticeable difference, especially in Stafford and everyone, but especially in Stafford after a win versus after a loss. After a win, especially like a big comeback win or something, he's elated. You could see it in his eyes and his demeanor and his attitude. He hates losing, and you could definitely tell.
And Caldwell?
Caldwell's obviously a lot more even keel, but I mean, you could see Caldwell was pure ownership mode. I take ownership for the missed or the blocked extra point.
Except for him talking about Joik.
What do you mean?
Well, he said that Joik didn't look good, right?
I don't think that he singled out anyone. No.
Not in that press conference, but
the Monday
press conference. Yeah.
Well, I think that he's pretty much not stood behind anyone saying that they've looked great, but he's faulted execution a lot. He's faulted really every aspect of the game. I mean, he was all, I got to look at the film. And
do you think that's shifting? Sorry, do you think that's shifting blame to the players and not to the actual scheme, which is something obviously we've touched on and a lot of people have touched on over the last few weeks about the offensive scheme? And do you think that he's shifting it away from him and his coaching staff to the players, saying that they're not executing?
I don't think that he's throwing the players under the bus, but I think that he's pointing at execution certainly a lot more than he's talking about schematics. I mean, he'll give you the bland, we got to improve everything type of line, but yeah.
It seems like he does take his time to actually think things over, and he, like you said, after the game he was very professional, like I own everything. But then it seems like week after week he kind of comes in on Mondays, and it's a little bit of a different story. We saw that in week 1, him talking about the backs not hitting the hole right and stuff, and even in this week with Joik.
Well, even in week 1, when you talk about the backs not hitting the hole, I don't think that was an isolated statement. I think that he said the backs aren't hitting the holes, the blocking can get better. I think that he was kind of attacking all the layers of it. So I mean, I think that that's kind of consistent with what he does. He won't single. He maybe in the film room he'll single someone out, or his coordinators or positional coaches will. But
I know that there was a suggestion on the fact of him taking over the reins as the offensive coordinator per se, calling the plays. Did anyone really ask that question, or did he touch on what his answer was? I know I've heard that he said that Joe Lombardi is the person who's going to be making the plays. Did you hear anything otherwise?
Well, yeah, that's what he said on Monday. It was funny because one of the first questions that he was asked on Sunday night was, a long-winded question about the offensive play calling and will he take over. And he addressed the first part very, clearly ducked that question. And the person that asked the question tried to instantly say, but okay, what about you calling the plays? But another person from the media jumped in and asked a completely different question. He just jumped over that and never got rehashed again. So then, obviously he had some time to think about it, and on Monday I'm sure he expected the question to be asked again, and he indicated that he doesn't plan on taking over the play calling. And I mean, he wasn't. I understand that he went and took over for Cameron back in Baltimore, and they ended up going on a tear and winning the Super Bowl that year and stuff, but he doesn't have extensive play calling experience as an NFL coach at any level in the NFL. The times he's been offensive coordinator or head coach or quarterback coach or all these positions. So I don't know that that's the answer.
Let's focus on the guy with the play calling experience, which seems like there might be something going on with that experience biting him. In that Joe Lombardi, or at least Golden Tate, came out today, which is Tuesday, and said that all three games, and even in Denver, specifically that the safeties were telling him that they knew what plays were coming. Is there something going on with maybe Lombardi using a lot of the same offensive plays or formations and not changing it up year to year, and that's causing maybe a huge issue for us right now?
I think that, it was interesting because someone called out or asked Stafford, about the interception, the first interception particularly on Sunday night, and asked him, do you think that the offense is getting a little too predictable? You could see that that the route was broken off of pretty quick. Mm-hmm. And he said, that's the first time all year that we've run that play. And kind of dismissed the notion. But I think that it's not that they know what play is coming as much as they're telegraphing things a little bit. I mean, you can see on the second interception, as soon as Abdullah goes to chip, the linebacker breaks off and runs. In both cases, the amount of ground covered in the interception was incredible, but you could see very quick reactions by the defense. You could see it on a couple of the screen passes that happened too. And I think that defenses are noticing the tendencies, whether it's route combinations or personnel assignments and maybe even formations to an extent. And I think that that's an issue. But honestly, to me,
and we talked about me mainly, but I kind of touched on how good I thought Denver's secondary was, and how that you can't really run simple stuff against them because they'll sniff it out pretty quickly. But let's focus a little bit on Tate and what do we think that he should be saying this type of stuff this early in the week? It doesn't seem like he maybe went to the coaching staff to talk about how the players on opposing teams know these play calls and maybe let the coaching staff in on this, and then went right to the media. What do you think about that?
I mean, there's always the keep stuff in-house mantra, but at the same time,
especially with the Lions,
I don't think he was trying to be disparaging. I think that he was, trying to note something that they probably think is very correctable. I mean, I know that there's been a lot of frustration with the offense. As soon as someone comes out and says something like that, I think that there's a bit of overreaction to it. I get it, but you can correct this stuff up. As a matter of fact, you can, if you're smart, you can turn it against the defense, and you can kind of learn the tendencies that they're expecting you to have, and use misdirections and these types of things in that area. So I mean, I don't think it's a huge deal. I don't know, if there's any fallout afterwards, but I mean, I'm sure that Caldwell would have preferred for it not to have been said. But at the same time, I don't think that Tate meant anything disparaging by it.
I feel like it's kind of odd too, because this isn't the first time that we've heard something about this. Like last year during the Super Bowl week, Drew Brees kind of mentioned the same thing, saying that looking at like their formations and schemes, like 70 of 95% of the time, he could call out exactly what Joe Lombardi was like, what his play formation or what his call would be. Now, that's coming back from 2014. Again, last year, I feel like the offense wasn't terrible, but I feel like the greatness of the defense kind of overshadowed how bad the offense really was, even though we went 11-5. I know we kind of touched on this earlier today in our discussion. What do you think?
Well, I think that...
Yeah, before you even answer, let's just say that Breeze was his quarterback. So if there was anyone on the planet who probably could predict those plays, I mean, it's probably a guy who at some point they were on the same page and probably worked as mentally as a unit.
Oh, definitely, of course. He's, anytime you're going to drive from your previous experiences and move forward.
Breeze is no bum either. Like
he's definitely not a bum. But like what we were saying, a player leaves a team. He ultimately knows the plays, but don't you think that maybe it is becoming stale? He's not using anything that we haven't already seen.
It's tough because it seems like the NFL is such a big place, but it's really not. Like we've seen it in the Tampa Bay Oakland Super Bowl. Like you're going to have matchups against people who know stuff about you.
No,
when we played Schwartz last year, it seemed like we had an easy week coming in, or at least not as hard as it was, and we struggled against them. But it might be because there are players and there are going to be coaches on other teams that know something about us, and that gives them a little bit of advantage. I mean, at 0-3, everything is going to be kind of hyped up, but that's just what you have to live with.
No, definitely. But I think more so, like, my line of questioning is, like, it kind of was brought up last year, even after an 11-5 season.
Yeah.
And now, we're 0-3 and we're hearing the same things and we're seeing it. And I think even us, like as a group, have gotten way more frustrated with the fact, like, we knew what our deficiency were coming into the season, but like now we're even more frustrated because like this offense is just it's atrocious. I mean, it really is. It really is bad, and there's nothing more like to be seen out of it. It seems like
there is something to be said about like a defensive player trying to get into the head of an offensive player's kind of as he's going back to the huddle saying, oh, we knew what you were running. Like that's going to be said probably in 90% of games, but I mean it is kind of alarming to hear that every game and it's on specific plays like the Abdullah block that these players are seemingly, from what Tate said, are confident that they know what we're calling is kind of scary.
It's one thing to hear something once, but when you hear it again and again, it's showing consistency.
Yeah. I mean, I get it, but to me, the bigger problem is the play design itself. I mean, you go back to the first interception, and I think that the tendency there is the route combination. You see, I think it was Lance Morris sit on his route. Soon as the player sees that, he looks at Stafford, sees where he's looking, and you could see that like it was simultaneous to Stafford about to throw that he breaks off the coverage. So, but the bigger problem to me is that I feel like and I understand I'm not an expert at offensive play design in the NFL, but to me, I feel like the route combinations end up having defenders and Lions players in similar areas often.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot and multiple times in games where two wide receivers are within 4 or 5 yards of each other, which rule of thumb don't do.
And I mean, you go back, you look at the Abdullah touchdown. I mean, that was the contrast to what we're talking about. It was a beautiful play design. You see 3 receivers on one side, a receiver on the other, and they create a bunch of space in the middle of the field by running a couple deep routes and a couple out routes. And it's Abdullah matched one-on-one with all the space that he could want, and it's a touchdown. And that's the issue to me. Even if the defense knows that come, how are you going to stop that?
Let's focus on the offensive line and some of the things that we changed throughout the game. Throughout the first quarter, got beat up pretty badly. Started off with 2 sacks, I think, right off the bat in the first quarter, and then
first drive, I think.
First drive, yeah, and then we seemed to start double teaming Ware and Miller, which seemed to work for a while. But I understand you don't want to do that all game because then you're probably going to get blitzes up the middle. So we had Stafford throw, I think, what did you say, 1.9 was the average for the game?
1.9 seconds.
So the pass plays lasted 1.9 seconds per play. And then, again in the fourth quarter, we didn't double team and we were holding on to the ball longer, which seemed to kind of basically throw the game in the trash at the end of the game. Like, we weren't really in trouble throughout the midway point of the second quarter and probably up to the 5-minute mark in the third. Why did we all of a sudden start holding on to the ball more?
Well, I think it comes sometimes circumstance dictates it a bit. If you're down, you're late in the fourth quarter, you need a couple scores. I mean, you might be trying to force plays there. But yeah, I agree. I think that but
that's what it seems like this year. We find something, we find a groove, and for no real reason, no blitzes up the middle to force us to stop double teaming. We just try and anticipate it, but it ends up biting us in the butt.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. I think first and foremost, one of the sacks in the first drive was the infamous San Diego interception. I mean, it was a heavy double-A gap look, pre-snap look. They didn't send it. DeMarcus Ware I don't understand how Riley Reeve collapses inside at any point. But, I mean, nevertheless, DeMarcus Ware goes untouched and sacks Stafford. So, I mean, I think that sometimes it's offensive line pressure. I think that, the other thing is, you got to get the ball out quicker. I don't like these heavy sets, especially you don't have Brandon Pettigrew. I mean, I think that Ebron made some key blocks in the game that were huge, and I think that he got destroyed on some block attempts as well that were critical. And the other part is you get behind the sticks, you have a negative yardage run, all of a sudden you're looking at 2nd and 12, and it's not so easy to throw that 3-yard pass, against such a good tackling defense. So I think that you kind of set yourself up for failure almost in some of these cases.
What do you think about Joyke Bell? You talked about the running, and I know we kind of touched on it a little bit about what Caldwell said in his press conference today about Joyke Bell. Looking at his average this year, he's got 22 yards for an average of 1.1 yard per carry. Do you see a digression from him? Do you think he's still injured? What do you think is the problem?
I think that the problem is the offensive line. Well, let me even take a step further than that. I don't think the problem is the offensive line. I think the problem is not using the offensive line to their advantage. You want to see some beautiful runs with 3 or 2 out of 5 of the same personnel, 3 out of 5. Go 2 years ago and watch some of the runs with Scott Linehan was calling the plays. I mean, he took Riley Reeve was there, Waddle was there, Warford was there. I understand that Raiola is there. You have Rob Sims instead of either Ramirez or Tom. But I mean, is this really is that the difference?
And Ramirez is obviously he's not the weak point or offense, so I wouldn't even look there.
I agree.
No, yeah, and we were even discussing too. Really, have you even heard Swanson's name? Anybody really criticizing his play? He's kind of fit in fairly well, for what Dominic Raiola was.
Yeah, I would say that the only issue there is the kind of inexperience with calling out maybe defensive fronts coming at him with Stafford, but he doesn't look to be uncomfortable. He's not getting beat most of the time. I would say maybe his kind of explanation to his guards and his tackles on who to block and what linebackers to pick up, but that's more so in the pass game. I didn't think that he's looked weak at all this year in the run game personally.
I don't think back to Joyke Bell, I don't see him being ever as an explosive back. Obviously he's our power change of pace back, but it just seems that he's a little bit slower off the line when he's receiving that ball. What do you think?
I mean, he was never a burner.
No, he never was, but he just seems lot slower. It just seems like when I'm watching,
he's missing the jump. He doesn't have the jump in the step. When he would break tackles and stuff, his knees would be basically at his well, I don't want to say at his chest, but at his hips, and they're not even getting that high. He doesn't seem to be turning his legs as well as he has in recent years, for sure.
I mean, I always thought that Bell's strength was his balance. I always thought that that's where he excelled the most. He was able to spin off blocks, stay on his feet. And, I mean, I don't think he's had a chance to get into the open field and get that going. I mean, I think that you look at the offensive line, I mean, if everyone's struggling, there's not a person on that line that hasn't struggled.
No.
You replace Lucas with Waddle, and Waddle was a disaster. I mean, there's no one that's playing well. Warford, who's your best offensive lineman, struggled. And I understand that there's rust and these types of things, but the common denominator there is how you're using them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is to me. I don't. It's hard. Bell hasn't been perfect. Abdullah hasn't been perfect. Whatever. But like, you look at all these plays and you see that they're at a disadvantage. I mean, both Lucas and Ebron missed. I read a bunch of comments about. I can bet you what the next play is going to be against Seattle to open the first offensive play. It's going to be a negative 1 yard rush to Joique Bell. But I mean. The truth is that like that's how the game started against Denver, and I get it, but it wasn't Joique Bell, it was Ebron and Lucas missing blocks, and you can either fault Ebron or Lucas, or you can look at a coaching staff that should know what their strengths and weaknesses are and put them in positions to succeed.
It doesn't seem to me that Eric Ebron should be, and I don't even think he should be anywhere near the offensive line. If he's not in the slot, I don't see him being on the field and being effective.
It's tough because they don't have pedigree right now.
Yeah.
And they didn't...
It does kind of make you... It kind of humbles you to all the Pettigrew kind of rips and chirps we've kind of taken off on Pettigrew.
Oh, for sure. I think that a lot of people always like look at the fact that it's like offense. Yeah, he's got no hands. He's
It's
dropping
the boring
but
game.
they don't look at the small things that he actually does, and the reason probably why that they brought him back.
The boring parts of his game that are obviously the most important. Like,
He's a blocking tight end at this point.
Ebron and Wright both entered the game to try and block and just both got blown to bits.
Well, when you look at that extra point, who was the person that got burned on that?
That one personally is it's not necessarily his fault. He didn't do what he's supposed to do, which is step to the inside. And there isn't a difference between high school football, college football, and the NFL, the way you block a field goal. It's very simple. Everyone steps to the end. No one gets beat on the inside. You let the guy go to the outside, and almost every field goal you will always see a cornerback or a safety diving last second and missing every time because it's just a matter of timing. There's no way any player could get to that ball from the edge. And the thing was, he didn't step in, but also they overloaded that side. So I'm not sure if it was something where he got into his own mind and was like, I got to block outside, or if it was, I don't know, something maybe he was told, but it didn't look like we had sufficient coverage on his side to block that.
I do give him credit for actually making the play in the end and running him down. I was very surprised that after seeing the replay that it was him who got burned.
It does
seem
seem like a mistake that he would make, though. Pettigrew would have been there, and he would have been blocking, and Ebron shouldn't be there blocking. But when Pettigrew's down, that's just the way it is. We probably should have an extra tackle in there.
Well, this is where
If Pettigrew's
potentially trading
not
away
in.
Mike Williams was an issue.
And I was just going to ask you that as well.
I know he wasn't a tight end anymore. They converted him to offensive tackle, and I'm actually not clear where New England is using him. I've seen him play a couple special team snaps for New England, but I don't know if they have him as a tackle or a tight end. But he was drafted to be a blocking tight end, and you at least know that he understands how to be that. So if nothing else in this emergency type situation, instead of trotting Tomlinson out, or they have Lucas as an extra lineman. I mean, I thought that they used the extra eligible lineman a little bit more this game than they have all season, which I can see why. But maybe having Mike Williams here would have been a difference maker.
All right, so let's focus our attention now to the defensive effort that we got against Denver. Primarily, I guess we should talk about someone we talked about last week, Big Play Slay. What do we think about his game?
I thought that it was obviously a rough outing. He got burned on a couple big plays. There was the Sanders drop on the sideline too. That would have been a big play. I don't know if you want to call it a drop. It would have been a tough catch, but you know what I mean. But I don't know. Like, I think that the reaction has been...
He was never out of position, but he didn't win the matchup when we needed him to.
Yeah, you'd like to see him come through with it. But
I wouldn't really blame him. Like, you might show, like, the receivers might show that if you're going to a higher level of play, you're going to show that on your highlight reel. But
yeah,
for him, like, it's not really a low light. He was in position, just got beat. Like, it's
obviously
things work.
One of the game changers, I guess, if you look at it, was 4th and 1.
Yeah.
Instead of having the ball on the 40-yard line after a turnover.
And I would say that has happened in years past, and I kind of think that he did it to us during that Thanksgiving Day game. I want to say that he actually pulled that on us way back when.
Got him to the 4th down.
Yeah, and but at least now the cornerback in Slay, it would have been Bly at the time. At least he was in position to make a play. Like, normally there wouldn't even been anyone smart enough to be aware that they would go deep on 4th and 1.
Looking at that actual play,
So it's like baby steps into mediocrity. But I mean,
what did you see on that play? Looking at that, like what are your insights?
It's tough. It's just pick your poison type of situation. It's 4th and 1. You can go with the safety help, but then Peyton Manning's going to probably pick something underneath, and they were having a lot of success there. So I mean, I think that the theory of let's make them beat us deep, and let's match our best cornerback against their best receiver, and it just unfortunately didn't work out. It's tough. I mean,
it's a little emotional for us too, because this is our boy. Like, we actually watched Slay kind of grow into the confident, cocky guy that he is, and to see him get burned, but like put forth such a good effort.
Do you think he's too cocky though? Like, I know they even touched on the broadcast, like about him saying, well, if I pick off a Peyton Manning a ball, I'm going to go and have him sign it on the sidelines. But it's cool. Like it's awesome.
But if you know what, I see that type of stuff happen. Like, I'm sure most people watch the Sunday night games, and there's always someone somewhere who's talking big. But if Chris Collinsworth and Al Michaels, like if he makes that play, then they would have been talking about his cojones and how big, like how cool of a guy he is, and he would, like, literally, I think word for word, Collinsworth would have said something like, "Look at this guy's Slay," or something stupid like that.
You're not wrong about that, but do you think that in that position where they were in the game, how badly they needed that stop to go and turn around, and go down the field, potentially to at least even get a field goal or something to end that half? Should he not been looking to make the pick and maybe just do something, anything to tip it away, block it away? Like, it's
a tough scenario, but I mean, like, how many times have we seen Revis? We've seen Revis get beat. We've seen Sherman get beat. We've seen all the best corners. Like, it's a 4th and 1. You're not going to have safety help. It's going to be 1-on-1, and you're playing Denarius Thomas, who is basically like a shadow of Calvin Johnson. Like, they played at the same school, and even Calvin Johnson has nothing but good things to say about him.
Yeah.
4 years ago, I remember Titus Young beat Richard Sherman.
Yeah, I mean, well,
just to bring
that's kind of embarrassing.
Titus Young references.
Everyone.
It's nice to go down memory lane.
Yeah, well, we're continuing to go around it because it's like deja vu. Titus Young happens to us constantly. Like,
it happens. The moral is it happens. I mean, is Darius Slay like at the level of a Sherman right now?
He's a number 1 corner.
But he's
I
not.
don't think
he's not
anyone
top 3 or 4 in the league at this point. He could get there. But I mean, that's the thing. It's tough. Like, what is he supposed to do? There's no playing safe and making the tackle. Right? It's 4th and 1.
If he went up to Peyton Manning right after the game and he said, "I'll play for your team," Peyton Manning would have tried to muster up a contract from John Elway somehow. Everyone in the league would want.
Lions could sue him for tampering.
Yeah, well.
So do I guess we just kind of look at it and hope that it's kind of a learn from your experiences?
I don't know what there is for him to learn. It was your player
if I was
versus my player, a 1-on-1 battle.
If I was in the locker room, and I'm sure every locker room has Mathis would probably be that guy to hype him up and say, like, cares, go out there and say it again next week. Go when you play Aaron Rodgers, do the same thing. I don't care, because you know what? When you get the pick, then it's gonna kind of. You might be able to get, like, that's the part of the game. You want to get into people's heads, and you want to, especially like a guy like Peyton Manning. We've seen him have games where defensive players are hitting him, jawing him, kind of in his face, and sometimes quarterbacks do. Even the best ones fold under the pressure. So
you can be confident that Slay won't wither. I mean, I talked to him about when he got benched in his first game, and he took it in stride. He hated it; it bothered him, but he didn't put his head down. He worked. He worked very hard. And the Slay, I think, I know he's taken a lot of backlash, and I hope people realize that, his playful demeanor, his cockiness, whatever you want to call it, is not something that makes him complacent. He works. He's a hard worker. He wants to be good, and he puts the time and the effort in.
And do you think it's easy for people to kind of jump on a guy like that who, they look from the outside and they say, oh, he's got a big mouth, and it's like good on him for getting burned? Whereas, like, they don't actually kind of like see things like where, you have that inside knowledge, and you see that you go to practice, you see how hard he works at practice, like how much he cares. And I'm sure, he studies a lot of game film, and he's always trying to make himself better. And that's kind of where he derives that cockiness from. And I think, it's hard for the normal person to kind of look at that and I feel like our society just kind of loves to jump on that cocky person who's confident.
I think that a lot of the cockiness with Slay comes from him playing the way you're supposed to play, being in position and making picks. So on every one of those plays, he was in a position when you're in the position, you know you're doing the right thing. So you have that checklist in your head, like, okay, I have him covered. I'm step for step with him. All right, I'm jumping in the air. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. If you do that week in and week out, and for the most part, like maybe 1% of the time you get beat like that, you're still going to be confident.
Oh, without a doubt, you're definitely going to get burned. Like I'm definitely not jumping on Slay. I'm kind of like playing devil's advocate here to kind of see what you guys.
And
think.
your number one is definitely going to be cocky because all the guys we mentioned all talk everybody's hero.
Oh, and I love it. Like when I saw it on the broadcast and like he announced his name as Big Play Slay, I loved every minute of it. I thought it was hilarious.
He, I mean, his attitude, and I don't mean that with any negative connotation, but his attitude makes him polarizing. It's just how it is, and if he does well, then people in Detroit are going to love him for his attitude, and if he does bad, then he's going to be the one that stands out in their minds, so he's going to jump on them, but they're going to jump on him, I mean to say. But he's the future of the secondary, and I mean, I don't know if you can call him the number one cornerback right now because he doesn't follow the number one receiver. Him and Mathis both play their sides, but I mean, he's...
No, but same with Sherman. Sherman doesn't switch sides, and he won't mark wide receivers either. So.
For sure. So it's tough. I mean, I think that Mathis had the better game between the two of them last game, but I also think that Slay was put in more difficult situations, and he held his own. He just didn't make the plays. But in year 3, you know, against Peyton Manning and in this type of situation, it's a learning experience. And I mean, he had that learning in the preseason game against New England. And this is a few years ago. I remember talking to him in his first preseason game. He played Tom Brady. And he was like, I was like, how is it playing against Tom Brady? And he's like, man, he just looked at me before the huddle, and I didn't know what to expect. And the ball came my way, and it was a big play, maybe even been a touchdown against them. And you could tell that he learned from that. And this might be one of those for him. But, you know, he's not going to be a shutdown corner in year 3. But you think a couple more years of progress, and he could be the elite cornerback that Detroit hasn't. I mean, I don't know when, not my lifetime that they've had.
Trade block.
Let's focus on actually something we talked about last week was Bynes not filling the shoes. I thought Bynes actually had quite the game. He made some big had some big pass defenses and made some massive tackles too. I thought Bynes played really well.
He played more than anyone else on defense. He was their best defensive player.
Where did they come from? Like it seemed all of a sudden like. Last week we were all talking about Bynes.
Well, I think he's been fine. I think that I said last week that
he looked
playing
good.
The Levy role.
Yeah, he looked good and he looked comfortable too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and Levy's still going to be an upgrade when he comes back, and I'm going to be curious to see what happens. I mean, do you move Bynes to another linebacker position? Does he become the number 2 and Tulloch plays less? You know, I don't know what's going to happen with that because it's been interesting to watch. Kind of Tahir Whitehead and Travis Lewis almost split time.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going to happen there. This was supposed to be the deepest group of positional group that this team had.
And I would say that it probably is if Bynes plays like this and
with
we get
Levy
back. Yeah.
It could be. I mean, but Bynes has played well. He's not Levy, and I think that the game kind of played to his strengths a little bit in the sense that a lot of the action happened within 5, 6, 7 yards of the line of scrimmage. But they played a lot of dime against the Broncos, and that put Bynes as the only linebacker out there, and
he was comfortable.
He stood up. I mean, you got to be happy with that.
Do we have any outlook on? I know Ziggy Ansah got injured, and obviously we're hoping that Levy's going to be coming back soon. Do you have any inside scoop?
I wish that I did. I mean, Caldwell refused to kind of really address much about it, and he has the famous lines of check the injury report. So
yeah,
I don't think we're going to see anything from that.
So with Caldwell, let's actually jump into that. It seems like his very professional demeanor is rubbing off a bit on these Lions players, and we've had more of an emotional coaches in the past. And maybe not as much success. Well, I guess as much if you count both.
We did finish 11-5 under Schwartz.
Yeah, 10-6.
Sorry,
it was a 10-6.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, but I mean, it seems like as a team, and especially losing Sue, that we don't the heart has kind of been ripped out of this team. Like we don't have anyone to really show up as the strong guy if anything happens.
Yeah, we're not
we don't have a group
rallying behind.
We don't have a group where if you were walking through a dark alley at night, there isn't actually Whitehead might be the guy, but no one really stands out to me to be like the tough guy that would have your back. You know what I mean? I'm sure all these guys would because they're football players. But
and we kind of came from like under Schwartz, we were hot-headed like Schwartz, and we were like the new bad boys of Detroit. And now, you know, I saw comments on a message board saying that it seems that Caldwell castrated our team, and we just kind of, you know, are we more of a patient team and kind of like taking to his personality now? Like, what do you think, Mike?
I think that he's brought an air of professionalism to him. I can tell you that that there's respect for him in the locker room. I remember they were the last team to come in for training camp this year, and I talked to a few players. I can't remember everyone, but I remember Glover Quinn specifically, and Clover Quinn will give you long-winded answers no matter what you ask him. But he definitely
as long as he gives me more than 6 picks a year, I don't really care.
But
he can say whatever he wants.
He went on for about 3 or 4 minutes of how much the team appreciated that, and you know the coach was looking out for them, and that I mean you could tell that there's a level of respect there, and you know I think that the issue is honestly there's too much fixation on the emotional side of the game. At the end of the day, winning makes all they're professional and they're winning and they're taking care of business. And when they were losing under Schwartz, it was they're hotheads. They have no control. They, you know, and it's because of their own 3. If they were 3-0, then the attitude would be exactly what you want to see.
Yeah, so. I personally don't think that's what makes your team a good team. Or like if you're smart and intelligent and you're quiet, I don't think that particularly makes you a good team, or vice versa. Like we see the Seahawks winning Super Bowls and they talk a ton of trash, but we also see Bill Belichick and the Patriots. They don't say anything. So
yeah, I just think it was a subject to kind of touch on just over the fact of, you know, last week and Matt Stafford and the comments that came out from the Vikings players saying that, you know, the team's not behind Stafford and such. And I feel
leave it to a division opponent to talk about your locker room and what good is going to be said.
So without a doubt, especially considering that they're going to be, you know, coming into Ford Field and playing us, they're looking for that slight edge or that controversy, something to
if that's what
Minnesota
needs. I mean, if they need Griffin to guarantee a win, if that's what it takes them to win. I mean, like if that's what it takes for us to win, I would assume that there would be a player that would step up and say something like Slay talking about picking off Peyton Manning. It's just the way it is. The
scary thing to me, again, is more it's just they lost to teams that played better than them. And to shamelessly plug here, I wrote an article on Detroit.scout.com about the fact that this is the Lions. Don't expect them to turn this around. This is what it's going to get ugly. I mean, I talked. Did
you get a new contract with Showcase? Because that really was shameless.
I like that show.
And it's Showtime.
Is it Showtime?
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, Showcase. What was the Showcase? Like
I think Showcase is the
Canadian version or
yeah.
whatever. I don't know.
Anyway, Caldwell said it, and I confirmed with Lance Moore. I talked to Lance Moore about it, and they said that last week was one of the best weeks of practice that they've had.
I can't imagine that's true.
They said the week leading up to the Viking game, for whatever reason, and I mean, no one really quantified it or provided examples, but they weren't a show.
So let's hope that we have one of the worst practices this week.
Do you think
if that's the case?
Maybe they were just like deflated after losing to San Diego, coming out with high expectations, kind of the same expectations that most of the fan base had, and that's maybe what led into like, you know, the bad week of practice. Because for the most part, I guess if you look at the game, you know, with the few like, you know, turns and the turnovers and such that pretty much cost us the game, they kind of were in there with Denver. They did better than I expected.
I mean, they shot themselves in the foot a lot. They gave Denver 3 points.
Denarius Thomas handed us the game a few times, and literally handed it to us with a fumble.
They ended up scoring a touchdown on that drive, so I mean, like ultimately they ended up with those points. Mm-hmm. But you
didn't we miss the?
You missed an extra point, so that's 1 point. You gave them another field goal.
But that's what I'm saying. Like we got handed the game, and then was that the one that we had to go for 2 on that one.
Yeah, we went for 2,
and we missed that too.
And they checked down to the.
So again,
Joik Pell.
They handed it to us.
Run play.
They handed it to us, and then we handed it right back. I mean,
You easily left 6 points on the because you're including the 2-point conversion, which funny enough, Stafford recognized that they checked out of it. Like the Lions, Stafford checked out of it, and then Denver checked out of their defense, and Stafford even said, like, this is going to be tough, and I don't want to burn a timeout.
All right, let's stop talking about this loss. I mean, it's in the back, right?
So
we have to move forward.
Let's move forward
Let's
and
move
move
forward.
to the impending potential loss.
Let's move forward to a team that we likely will not move forward against, and a team that just shot a shutout last week against the Bears.
Yeah, they did. They looked pretty good against the Bears.
Yeah,
they were an 0-2 team too, but
Chancellor signed back. I mean, you wouldn't think that he would be that important, and maybe the Bears. I mean, they're probably not as good.
Chancellor, I think Chancellor.
But Chancellor is a huge piece to have for them, and now he's back. And
anyone that jumps over the line of scrimmage to block,
a guy who seems to be pretty angry at this point, and is kind of injecting that into his game too, which is scary because he hits like a madman.
So what do we see as an outlook for this upcoming week?
I mean, Glover Quinn predicted this as a loss essentially before the season started. So if that,
He did. It was our only loss.
Yeah, that's gonna maybe it'll be the inverse will be true, but it's I don't know how they would have to they're gonna lose. There's no, I hate to say it.
Talking about how much we don't want Stafford to be a game manager, Russell Wilson, a guy who makes the game manager type look good. Like he is probably the best game manager you could possibly have. And
I feel like he's like getting out of that. Like he
No,
has
man.
some explosive plays too.
he
though,
does.
Russell
Well,
Wilson.
he always has. Because
Ultimately, yeah, I guess if
he
you want
has
to
the
classify him, he is.
he has the athletic ability, but that's what I mean. Like if you were to choose a game manager that you would want your quarterback to be, it would be him.
The best quarterbacks in the league are game managers, except for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
And Andrew Luck.
On
But
the plus side.
But I mean, when you talk about Brady, like game manager in terms of like I'm going to run the ball a bunch of times. I mean, that's what their offense calls for. But Brady, you would call a game manager, but on a completely different level. Like he's just a great quarterback. Whereas Russell Wilson, if he's not a great quarterback, he certainly is a great game manager.
Oh, definitely. But again, you're talking about the running game. Do we keep our fingers crossed and hope that Marshawn Lynch is out for this week?
Does it matter?
It
Because
probably doesn't.
if
but
you watched last week, Rawls ran
Rawls
real
did
well.
look good. Yeah, he did look good.
So I mean, like we caught a break, but at the same time, probably doesn't matter because we've had a little bit of an issue in the run game. I don't want to count any sort of pluses from our run defense from this week because Denver can't run the ball either. So this will be kind of the biggest question answering game for sure. If we don't have Lynch running and we get beat by a backup running back who might be good anyway, I mean that will probably answer most of our questions. I
think that ultimately the Lions have to move the ball on offense for any of it to matter, and I don't know if they're going to be able to. I mean, I don't know what to say. Like,
The mood is
I
pretty somber.
don't think that anyone disagrees with you. This is just someone you don't. No one wants to play this team, and it's in Seattle, right?
Oh, it's in Seattle.
Yeah, so,
especially
like-
in Seattle.
Let's go and play football where there's technically a crowd that will like be on the Richter scale. Like they measure on the Richter scale, which is insane.
Oh yeah,
you know,
it's-
Golden Tate's going to show up at least. You know, he's going to be
Or he's
absolutely
gonna,
fired up.
get lit up. Someone's gonna take a shot at him. Maybe I don't know because he didn't. Did he have a clean break with them, or was there like?
I think there was slight issue, but wasn't
Yeah.
it more so like with Percy Harvin, who's not there anymore?
Oh yeah, I guess that's true.
He was insulted by the offer that they gave him, but I guess we're not talking about the Seattle side because there's going to be a player on that defense that is looking to
Yeah,
maybe
definitely.
inflict some damage.
I think Cliff Averill is so far removed that he wouldn't care that much about playing the Lions. Like it's not an immediate thing for him. Like he hasn't been with us for a while, but he's a good player and like someone I wish we would have kept. Obviously, but he's a good player anyway. So like him showing up or not, he's going to show up because he's a good player. Not I don't think because he's playing a former team, his only former team in the NFL.
All right, so let's go around the table and give our official thoughts on. Are we going to win this week? Fano,
No, I don't want to start.
why don't you want to start?
Nate, I want Mike Mady to start. Because I want to, I feel down. I don't feel good. And I need, a very logical sense of thinking.
Let's not look at it. Are we going to win? Do we even have a chance to win?
Always a chance. There's always
a chance.
Oh, Jeffrey chimes in.
No, but
Gets in on the end.
Even I agree with that. Yeah, we'll get in here. Our good friend who's been sitting on the podcast, Jeffrey Ziba, who's been hanging out. So we'll get your opinion too. I agree with that. Like if you show up and the other team doesn't,
right.
if the other team doesn't get up to play,
if you show up, there's always a chance to win.
If the Seattle Seahawks don't get off the runway, and something happens where I don't know why, like
they were 0-2 in the beginning.
If they move,
are you saying they're still in Chicago?
They're still in Chicago. If they all decide to move to the woods and just live off the land for whatever, if they all just go insane and don't play football ever again, then there's a chance we win.
Can we just get
all
someone?
the Lions fire off, right? They could be all on their game completely.
That's a very positive thought. It could be. It could happen.
I'm very hopeful. It's all hope. I don't expect them to win, but I'm hoping. Just like Denver.
I'm hoping to win too. I'm trying to side with Mike Mady's inverse philosophy.
We've known this team for way
based
too long.
on Glover Quinn.
We went 0-16 once, so this isn't like we know this. So it's a possibility that we suck all the time forever.
It's true. I
that's all
that.
I'm saying. Is there's a we know the worst of times, worst possible outcome we know.
Yeah, it can't be worse than 0-16.
It can't be worse than 0-16. So that's why I'm on the side of you still have to show up and play. But I mean,
okay, better question then. Are we actually going to see a play design where the ball's passed more than 20 yards by Matt Stafford this week?
I think there's two. I think there's two to Ebron and
he'll throw over 20.
You're right. There was that one Ebron one. But
how about this? Will we, if we're down with under a minute left, or if we're down by 2 scores and we have the potential to tie the game, will we try and score a touchdown, or will we throw 10-yard outs?
Yeah, what was it? Okay, I know we're close to closing the show, but what was up with that? It didn't even seem like they wanted to try and give themselves a chance to kick an onside kick and potentially. It's like they just quit. What do you think, Mike?
They're trying to get to the sideline and stop the clock.
But it was all dink and dunk.
At the 30, were they at the 30? I think they were at the 30.
And they weren't taking end zone
shots. And you're going to the sidelines? You have 50 seconds to score, and then at best you're going to be at the 45 after the onside kick, the 40 or the 45.
Yeah, and they took literally one end zone shot. Obviously, you were at the game and you were in the press box, so you didn't get to hear the telecast. I don't know if you rewatched the game when you got home. But Chris Collinsworth was talking about, he had no expression as to what the Lions were doing and why they weren't taking a shot at the end zone. It's I don't know. I just feel like we came out on national TV and it kind of was just
there are some things logically that don't make sense that we've had in our bag for so many years. If you're 30 yards away from the end zone at any point in time, there should never be a hesitation to have Calvin Johnson just sitting in the end zone.
Well, I mean, they're playing a prevent defense against you, though.
Sure, but who cares?
Exactly.
I personally don't care.
At that point,
if you're down by 2 scores,
you've already lost the game. So why aren't you trying to take the shot to at least give yourself a chance? What's the worst case happens? Okay, so Stafford throws his 3rd interception, and the game's over then. Exactly.
On principle, the amount of money you pay to have Calvin Johnson on the field dictates that you have to have a throw to him. Even at the end of the game, they still didn't.
I think you're trying to get to that point. You need about
30
seconds, and then the onside kick, and then you get a couple chunk plays, and then Hail Mary.
But the thing is, they were to that point. It was all dink and dunk, and Theo Riddick did a great job.
And on 4th down, did they even?
No, they did. No, they did. They went to Golden Tate.
Oh, well,
they went to Golden Tate. That was the only one that they kind of went over 20 yards.
Such a tall receiver, but I guess it's going back to the thinking of Titus Young did it once.
No, and for sure, but I don't even think that's the case in point. It's just the fact.
2 Titus Young.
You know what? Somewhere Titus Young is just feeling the love.
I think just for that, I think we need to pull out the ball. Yeah. Take a picture, post on the website we have those 2 autographed Titus Young balls that we hold.
Rhonda, a member of security at Ford Field. Y'all ain't supposed to be here.
Oh, man.
How about this? Y'all ain't supposed to be here, Detroit Lions. It's not supposed to be this bad of a team.
So I guess the consensus is we just pray?
I do sincerely want to hear what Mike Manny has to say about this upcoming week.
It's going to be next to impossible to win. I mean, they have to...
But next to...
To your point, anything's possible. Any given Sunday, someone could win. Right? You
Have
never
to
know.
play the Kevin Garnett.
Seattle hasn't been the dominant. Like they
Anything's
haven't looked to be
possible.
and shutting out Chicago is not. Chicago's trading away players after 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Which I think is hilarious.
So I mean, I think that with that said, like it's going to be tough. But
We should have went after Jared Allen just to make him live in Michigan, actually.
if the line, that's funny. Is Brown or Rocks? Did he say? It's like Brown or Rocks. I see.
That guy's a
Anyway, if the Lions maybe take some of this Golden Tate air quote controversy,
Use it to their advantage.
Yeah, I mean, like if you know what your tendencies are, use them against Seattle. Don't try to be something you're not. For the love of God, you don't. I hate this run the ball 25 times nonsense. No, stop running the ball.
No.
You can't run the ball.
You have to run the ball.
You can't.
At a certain point, you do have to run the ball a little bit, but I didn't disagree with you last week. There are certain teams that just can't do it, and those teams aren't successful, and that's what our team is. To try and be more successful, I understand that we have to pass. We basically have to ban the run. I understand that from our standpoint, but if you're looking to try and be a successful NFL team, you're not going to be able to do anything. So if you're up by a score at the end of the game, and you're going to try and run out the clock with 3 and outs, 3 and outs, 3 and outs, and give the opposing team the ball every time, like that, it's just not a formula of success. But I do agree with you that that's what we have to work with. So we might have to throw the ball 100% of the
The
time.
best run play against Denver is when Stafford checked out of the run and threw a 6-yard pass to Calvin
It
Johnson.
just is what it is. But again, we're not winning games, so it shows you how successful the formula is that they're not running the ball.
So that's the thing. The Lions keep trying to force a square peg into a round hole, or did they start playing for the strengths next week? I think that it's unlikely that things change. If you invested an offseason into being what you are, no one's going to change in a few days. So I don't think it's possible that they can win based off of that, but I think it's possible that if they make these changes, there's a chance.
I think we can all say with consensus that we aren't going to win this week.
Another
But
sad podcast next.
I mean,
That's
the place
you
to
saying it,
go
I'm
to.
gonna-
The place
I'm
to
pulling
go
on
to.
my inner Lions fan, and I'm just gonna hope.
Well, the best place to hope is one of the most depressing cities in all of the U.S. and Seattle, where it rains more than anywhere else. So I'd like to thank Scout.com, Lions Report, beat writer, NFL Inside Locker Room Insider, Mike Mady, friend of the pod, Jeff Z.
And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to hit us up at sustainedpridepodcast.com. Shoot us an email if you have any questions. If not, we'll see you next week.